Hey there, Stampers. This is Sherry Roth. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Alberta, Canada, and I'm here today to share a fun project with you. It's a simple one that can be used for any occasion. You can see I've got a couple samples here. So what we're going to create is a card folio. So I recently shared a couple videos. They're called Stack, Cut, and Shuffle cards. So that was the technique that I shared. And in one of them, we created 3 cards. So these were the 3 cards that we created. And I will link that video in the description below. But I wanted to create a little folio for them. So something that I could pop the cards into and then turn around and use as a host gift. So this one uses the Open Sleigh suite, or One Horse Open Sleigh suite, from the online exclusive section of our Stampin' Up! Website. And then this one uses the Winter Meadow. I should have confirmed the names. I hope I have the names right. And these are 3 cards. So I used exactly the same format. I just used different product for these 2 cards, or 2 card sets. Okay. But today we're going to do something, we're going to do a fall one. So let me just close this up. And last week I shared a video where I created these 4 cards. So they are a stack, cut, and shuffle card. And again, I will link it in the description below, but we made 4 cards instead of 3. And I want to gift some of these. We are going over to a friend's place for dinner on a Saturday, and I wanted to create a little holder for them. So we are going to use the Autumn Leaves bundle from the September to December mini catalog. And you can see that I've pre-done some things here. Let me set this aside so I can give you all the measurements. Okay, so we are going to start with an 8.5 by 11. Piece of cardstock, and then whatever color that you choose for your cardstock, you'll also need 2 pieces that measure 1.5 by 1 3/4. Okay, and I'll walk you through the scoring and everything. This is actually really simple to make, and I love that it just uses one 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and a couple little scraps. Okay, and then as far as decorating, now we are going to do some things together, but I want to share what I've got here first, and I will have a link to the blog post where you can find all these measurements, so don't feel like you have to write everything down. All right, so this is a piece of early espresso. I've cut it to 4 5/8 by 6 1/8. And then I am using scraps of DSP. So this is the All About Autumn DSP, which unfortunately, at the time that I'm filming this video, it is on back order and not due in until the end of October. So I apologize, but you can replace this with another DSP that you have, or a piece of embossed cardstock, or you can stamp your own patterned paper. Okay. So I'm going to use this, and this, because this was a scrap, I'm going to make this work. So this piece happens to measure 3.5 by 6. And then I took a piece of copper clay. This is just 1 by 6, and I embossed it using this fabulous distressed tile embossing folder, which is part of the All About Autumn suite. All right, so that's going to fill in the gap. So unlike these other ones that I created where it's a full piece of patterned paper in behind, if you have a piece large enough, then you want it to measure 4.5 by 6. Okay, so on this one, it's 4.5 by 6, and on this one, it's 4.5 by 6. I'm just all about using what I have on hand and using up scraps, so I made this piece work for me. Okay, the other thing is I went ahead and I cut a large maple leaf from a piece of old olive cardstock. We're going to do something to this, but we're also going to use this negative space. And then I've got a scrap of copper clay here, and I've got the label shape. This is also from the Autumn Leaves dies. So it's this one here, just cut from a piece of vellum. Very vanilla. All right. Okay, I've got some ink colors and some blending brushes as well, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to start by doing our measuring and our cutting. So I'm going to pull in my paper trimmer, And I'm gonna open the arm, and we're gonna take our 8.5 by 11 inch piece, and we are gonna score it. Let's just open this up here, make sure I'm in camera. Okay, we're gonna score it at 5 1/4. So I've got the 11 inch length at the top. I'm gonna score it at 5 1/4 and 5 3/4. And then I'm gonna rotate it so that the 8.5 inch side is at the top, and I'm gonna score it at 6 3/4 and 7 inches. That doesn't seem right. Oh yes, that's right. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna set this aside for now. We're gonna bring in our 2 smaller pieces, and we are gonna line the longer side. So the 1 3/4 inch side is at the top, and we're gonna score it at 3/4 of an inch. And then we'll flip it around so that the long edge is at the top, and we're gonna score it at 3/4 of an inch. So basically you're scoring it at 3/4 of an inch from either end, okay? So again, long edge at the top, line it up with 3/4 of an inch. I'm using the measurement on the right-hand side. I like to use the right-hand side for smaller measurements. Then rotate it around and do 3/4 of an inch again. Okay, so now we can set this aside. We're gonna bring this piece back, and I like to use a longer bladed scissor to do this. And what we're gonna do from this score line here, so this one right here, we're gonna move the scissors in about 1/4 of an inch to the right of that score line, and we're gonna cut right up to this intersection, okay? So about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just gonna go right up there. And then we're gonna do the same thing. So this other score line, the score line on the left, we're gonna go 1/4 of an inch to the left of that score line and right up to the top. Okay, so it'll look, don't worry if it's not perfect. So it'll look like that. And then we're just gonna cut this flap right off. We don't need that, okay? All right, now we're gonna take our bone folder and we're gonna fold along all these. Actually, you know what? We're gonna do, for the other 2, I did not do anything to this background, but I wanted to dress this up a little bit. So before we fold along the score lines, we're gonna do a little bit of ink blending. So that is where this comes into play. I'm gonna use it as a mask. So I'm using some crumb cake. So just, oh yeah, that is the right color, okay. So crumb cake on crumb cake. And I'm just gonna position this and add just a little bit of color. I don't want it to be too dark. You can make it as dark as you want, but I just want it to be subtle. Why does this seem, this is brown, okay. Seems a little bit more orange. So it's just gonna create a little subtle background. So I'm gonna change the position of the leaf so that it kind of looks like leaves are falling, so they're not going in all the same direction. And we're just gonna repeat this in a few different areas. Let's do this one going this way. And if you do them off the edge of the page, like I did this one here, it makes it look like it's pre-patterned paper cut down to the size that you want it. And then let's do a little bit here. And we can do a little bit here. So that carries over into the inside. Okay, and then we'll do the back as well. I love our blending brushes. For this, you get such a nice, smooth, blended pattern. Let's do this one. Going this way, we'll do a whole one so it takes up a lot of space, so we don't have to do as many. And now because we're adding a relatively large piece on the front, it will cover up a lot. So I'm just going to keep that in mind. We'll do another one here. Okay, and then I think I'm going to do just a little bit here up at the top. And then just a little bit right here. All right. Okay, so I think we're good for that. So now we've got, oh, you know what? I want to add a little one here. It's the back. Nobody would notice, but I noticed it. Okay, there we go. All right, so that is a quick and easy way to add a nice subtle background to some cardstock. We'll move that out of the way. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to assemble our folio. So we want to fold along all the score lines. So this is going to create like a little pocket so that we can put our cards in it. Now I have 3 cards in the other 2 just because the stack, cut, and shuffle pattern that I shared for those ones created 3 cards, whereas this one I'm going to put 4 cards inside. But I think you could probably fit as many as maybe 3 per side. It might be a little full. I guess it just depends on how embellished they are or how thick your cards are. Now we're going to bring in these little bits and we're going to fold along the score lines here. Just like that. Okay, and then for this next step, I prefer to use multi-purpose glue. So I have this bottle that I purchased on Amazon that I just put Stampin' Up's multi-purpose glue inside so that I get a nice fine tip. And we're going to line this up right with the edge and then close it. So that is just going to make sure that our cards don't fall out the side. So you want it lined up just like that. And because it's liquid glue, you can manipulate it a little bit. I'm just going to use my bone folder, just apply a little bit of pressure and then flip it over, slide my bone folder in and just apply that pressure. And now we've got that great pocket. And we're just going to repeat that on this side. So we'll pop that here, line it up with the edge, and then fold this over. So you can use tear and tape for this part, and I will use tear and tape for the next step, but I much prefer to use multi-purpose glue for this because it does give me the flexibility to be able to reposition if it's not exactly lined up the way I want it. And that is it for doing our folio. That's as quick and easy as it is. Now you can spend as much time as you want dressing it up. So I'm going to use some copper ribbon, and let's see, I don't have the length. Oh, yes, I do. You want about 23 inches if you want to tie a bow. So I'm going to use my grid mat here. Let's just measure it out. I'll grab my ribbon scissors and I'll give it a cut, a snip here. So about 23 inches. If you wanted to just tie a knot, you wouldn't need that much. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of make sure that that's even. And then I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to use some tear and tape to adhere it. Now, I'm only going to adhere it on the front. You can adhere it on the back as well. I don't mind it kind of being loose on the back. And when I use tear and tape, that doesn't look very straight, does it? I like to burnish it with my bone folder to make sure it's really stuck on there. And then I will use my take your pick tool, my paper piercing bit, peel that off. And I want to make sure this is straight. And then I'll just fold this over. If it's not perfectly straight, it's not going to be noticeable once you get your front bit on. All right, so there we go. Now we're going to work on our focal point. So I'm going to, actually, you know what, let's tie this so that it's done. Actually, no, because we're going to put our cards inside. Okay, so I'm going to adhere my patterned paper. And add it to my espresso so that I have about 1/16 of an inch showing all the way around. And then I'll add this embossed layer. And that's gonna get added on here, butted right up against that DSP, just like that. That's so pretty, even just like that. All right. Let's go ahead and add this to the front. And I'm going to be quite generous with the adhesive. Our multi-purpose glue is really sticky. It holds up really well. But because it's going to be sitting over top of that ribbon, I really want to make sure I have enough adhesive on there. So we can't see a whole lot of the pattern in behind. It's very subtle, but you will be able to see it on the back, and even when you open it on the inside. Okay, so we'll set that aside. Now we're going to do a few things. We're going to do some stamping and a few other things here. So I'm going to bring in my scrap paper, and I've got my die cut leaf, so the leftover piece from our stencil that we created. I'm going to bring in some old olive ink, and I'm going to take the veins from the leaf, and I'm going to stamp them on my die cut leaf. And then I'm going to use my blending brush. So this is a green one. I have kind of one for each kind of color family. One for greens, one for browns, one for oranges, that type of thing. And I'm just going around the edges just to give it a bit of variation in color. Okay. And then I'm going to take my leaf in the palm of my hand and I'm going to crinkle it. This is going to give it even more dimension. And then we'll set that aside. Now I'm going to bring in my copper clay and one of the leaf stamps. So I'm going to slide a Stampin' Pierce mat underneath, and I'm going to use this leaf image from the Autumn Leaves stamp set. And I'm going to stamp that on there. And then we're going to die cut it. But before we do that, I just want to finish my stamping. So I can slide this away. I like to use the Stampin' Pierce mat with any solid image photopolymer stamps. So it just gives that little bit of cushion so you get that really nice impression. Now I'm going to grab my greeting and some early espresso. And I'm going to stamp with a grateful heart. Okay, and we'll bring in the mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss so we can die cut our leaves. And I'll grab the coordinating dies. And just a piece of washi tape to make sure that they don't move on me. Went to the effort of stamping them. I want to make sure that they cut properly so I don't have to start over. All right, so now we've got some leaves in that copper color. Just peel off my die here. Okay, we can slide those away. And now I don't have one of these made, so I'm just these are just pieces that I decided to kind of put together. So we might have to play around with this just a little bit to see what we like. I might use just the ink that's left on my blending brush just to soften the vanilla around the edges a little. Okay, and we're going to pop this up using dimensionals. And we're going to stick this on first. So I want it to be kind of down here, maybe right about there. Make sure it's straight. And then I think I'll put the leaf. Let's see, we've got these two as well. I'm going to use my bone folder and kind of curl these up a little bit. Yeah, I think I'm going to slide them underneath. Okay, so this is probably going to need to go on dimensionals as well, just because it's got all that texture from when we crinkled it. So I'm going to slide that, if I can, just under there just a little bit. The great thing about this kind of thing is you can go off the edge. It doesn't matter. Unlike a card that you need to kind of slide into an envelope. Okay, and then we'll slide that in there. We'll use a bit of multi-purpose glue. Pop that on there like that. Okay, and then on these cards, what I did was I used a little bit of crumb cake. I put crumb cake twine in behind the leaves, but then I also used crumb cake on the top. So I think I'm going to add a little bit of crumb cake there, like just a little bow. And in hindsight, I probably should have used Mossy Meadow, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. So we'll just tie a little bow with some crumb cake twine. And I'll have pictures of all three of these up in the corresponding blog post. Put a little bit of multi-purpose glue on there. We'll add that bow. That finishes it off nicely. And then again, I just want to mimic these little dots. So I used rustic metallic dots. So I'm going to add some of those to this as well. And I'll just add 3 of these on here. Okay, let's bring in our cards. Now I don't have all my envelopes here, but so I've got 1, 2, 3. I'm missing 1 envelope, but that's okay. We'll fit it in here. I'll tuck 2 on this side, 2 on this side, close it up, and then, yeah, so these are quite bulky cards because of the crinkled leaves. So 4 is really all that will fit, 2 on each side. So it really depends on how dimensional your cards are. So that is quite a full kit, whereas this one only has 3 in it. And you can see it sits a little bit nicer, but they're not quite as dimensional, the cards that are inside. So let me bring in the last one. So we've got this one that we created today that has the cards from last week's Facebook Live. This one that has cards from a previous Facebook Live. And then this one using the same design as this one, just using different product. So there are 3 different ideas for you to create gifts, whether you want to use them for host gifts or the upcoming holidays. So many different ways to use them. So just make sure that you refer back to the videos that I have linked in the description, so you can see how the cards were made if you missed those. And if you create them and share them online, make sure that you tag me, because I would love to see what you create. All right. Thanks so much for watching. I will have all the supplies that I use linked in the description of this video. If there's anything that you would like to order and live in Canada, I'd appreciate your orders. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. All right. Take care. Bye, guys.